Welcome back to the Knife Studio.
Here it is.
My name is Kyle Royer and I'm a master bladesmith.
It looks really cool when you wire wheel it.
Making my first ever sword. So let's embark on this epic edged adventure.
Yesterday I was using a carbide burr to remove some of the metal inside of here while I was fitting the guard. Normally I do that all under the microscope, so my eyes are protected by the big microscope right there. But since this guard was so deep, I couldn't quite see back in there far enough, so I took it out of the microscope area just a little bit to get up in there and be able to see what I was doing. And sure enough, right then I got a little burr of razor sharp, tiny piece of metal in my eye. I'm always good about wearing my glasses in the shop, but you gotta be careful because one little lapse and you're going to the eye doctor to have rust ground out of your eyeball. I have the guard profiled. I spent a lot of time getting the curves just right and getting them symmetrical on both sides. That was the hard part. That little layout trick I showed you guys with the paper, yeah, I did it a lot more to get everything the same. It fits up to the blade really well now. The front spacer also fits to the blade really well. So the next thing to work on is the Fossil Walrus Ivory handle. This is gonna be the piece we're gonna use right here. I need to probably start squaring up the sides of it and figuring out where the center of the handle needs to go so I can start hollowing out the very center for the tank. I had a bad spot. I was surfacing this off lightly and I just wanted to barely get into it because the core is off-centered a little bit. So I wanted to lightly dust this side and then take more off this side. And now the core is getting dangerously close to the edge. So I'm trying to figure out if I can use this piece or not. This is gonna have deep flutes in it and I don't want the flutes to get into the core. So it's really close to the edge on one side and lots of thickness to work with on the other side. I've got the spacer all squared up. I went ahead and surfaced the sides of it, put a center line on there and got the top and bottom equal distances from the center line with it all lined up on the sword. So it's centered on the sword this way and the sides are parallel. Then I went ahead and put a bunch of layout lines on it and I think I'm gonna go over to the grinder with a round wheel and start grinding that radius on the top and bottom. Once I get that radius established how I want it on the top and bottom, then I can start moving on to fitting the ivory and cutting the slot out in the ivory for it to fit up over the tank. Have this front spacer shaped. I always like to get these two sides shaped before I fit the handle material on, just so I can line the handle material up properly this way. It'll get shaped down more later after the rest of the handle's all assembled. I ended up putting this radius on here with the round wheel attachment. It worked pretty good. It took me a while, but I got it to where I think it looks identical on both sides. What I was going for was a little bit of a flow. You can see this little tiny choil area here that I've cut away on the blade. If you look at it carefully, that flow that curve on the choil goes right into the front spacer. I wanted it to just kind of flow out into the handle. The next thing I can do is draw some lines on this handle material where the tang goes and start drilling holes and milling and broaching it out until I get it to fit up on here. fit. Not bad, man, not bad at all. Normally stuff doesn't come out that good for me. Uber sweet. That is sweet. We're pretty much ready to start working on figuring out how to do the pommel. This thing weighs like more than the whole sword, I think, at this point. We're gonna start working on the pommel next. Pommel nut, figure out what I'm gonna do to shape this tang down, and the end of the tang will be threaded. So I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do there, and start working on this next. Lunchtime.
The next day.
Lunchtime is over. I think I'll mill a slot for the pommel. I'll definitely go about 1.5 inches or so with this end mill bit and get the pommel to index and fit tightly onto the tang so it won't turn or anything. And then the last 1.5 or 2 inches, I will turn into a kind of round rod and thread it for the pommel nut on the end. I've once again been staring at the knife trying to figure out the next process to do. Sword, excuse me, not used to saying that yet. So after looking at it for a long time and figuring out some of the materials and stuff I have to go with here, mill the end of that flat, take it in, figure out how long I need to cut it because it's a lot longer than it needs to be. You know how I like to have a flat thing to go off of. Have it sit there square with everything else. So now I have some flat surfaces that I can reference off of. Some little tiny flat ledges right here. So if I put it on a flat surface like this, now it's nice and flat. After I had the flat surfaces here and here, I think I'm gonna go with a 5/16 inch drill bit. The first 1 to 1.25 inches of the pommel will get a slot in it for the tang, and then the rest of the tang on the sword, I'm gonna go ahead and round and then thread the end of it so it'll fit into this 5/16 inch hole that I'm gonna drill through here. So let's start grinding, milling, drilling, lathing, and cutting away at this thing. So here's the pommel. Got a 5/16 hole going all the way through this piece of metal. And I've also made on one end of it a 3/8 of an inch hole that goes in about a 1/16 of an inch or so. And that'll be for the pommel nut to sit down in there. I'll show you more of that later. What else have we done? Oh, the small end has also got a little bit of a slot that goes in about 1.25 inches in. And that's so it indexes to the tang. I think I'm ready to chuck this thing up in the lathe and start turning it down.
The next day.
So I got this pommel turned down yesterday. I've got a slot in the end of it here, and I've been lightly shaving down the tang just a little bit so I could get this pommel to go all the way up to where it needs to fit. It's coming out real nice and tight too. Right now we have a 3/8 inch hole. It goes about a 1/16 of an inch deep, a little further. And that's where the pommel nut will set down inside the pommel. And now that this pommel fits on here after doing a lot of shaping and stuff on here, I think I can probably go ahead and make the pommel nut. Is probably one of the next things we can do. So yeah, it's starting to all come together. We got a handle and a pommel, starting to look like a sword handle. This is gonna be the pommel nut. It's a chunk of mild steel to match the mild steel fittings that the rest of the knife has. I've got a hole drilled in here, and now I'm gonna take these 5/16 inch taps. We've got a taper tap, and then I've got a bottoming tap. Run through it with a tapering tap first, and then the bottoming tap, and get some threads on this thing. Then we'll take it and start turning it down on the lathe into a pommel nut.
Now, for the tip of the day.
It's important to clean off the threads on the tap and the threads in the piece each time, just to get nice cleaner threads. And also there's a whole bunch of dust down there keeping me from going all the way down. I mean chips, blow it out with air. Here it is, just got it assembled. This thing is incredible. Love having it put together for the first time. Finally, you're starting to get all the components together. Just got the pommel nut finished. The pommel nut's actually ready for gold inlay. It's the most finished piece on this whole sword. It's probably even a little closer to being done than the blade actually. So here's the finished pommel nut. It's got 5/16 inch threads in it, and it's recessed to sit down inside of the pommel a little bit. I don't know if you can see that, but it sits down in there. And once I get the pommel all domed and everything, there'll be a nice, perfect domed transition to the pommel nut. If you didn't recess it down in there, it would have to have a flat spot. So the pommel would be domed and then there'd be a little flat spot on top, and it wouldn't be a nice, smooth, flowing transition. So it's a little extra work to do that, but it really makes a nice fit and a nice transition for domed pommels and stuff like that. So one of the next things we're gonna do is take this really, really roughed in chunk of pommel and start turning it down and get it really close to the final shape that we want. Then after that, I can start putting lineup pins on the end of the pommel and on the handle, both ends of the handle, and then going into the front spacer too, so everything indexes together and comes apart perfectly every single time. Once we got all that done, then we can really start fine-tuning the guard, shaping that down, because right now it's super wide and thick, and shape it down the way it's supposed to be and get the handle shaped and the front spacer and get the pommel finally shaped once everything lines up and has lineup pins and goes together and comes apart the same every single time. Hello everybody, welcome back to the Knife Studio. Hello, testing, sound check. Can you hear me? Get that mic right up in my mouth almost. Ugh, it's covered in oil. I think my tongue touched it. Just do it, I am loving it. This sword is just doing it, I'm loving it.
Watch out for the airline in the ceiling.
Got the blade tangled up in there earlier.
Did you really?
Yeah.
How fun.
I understand you're frustrated. So many unanswered questions. The video left you hanging. You simply need to subscribe so you can get notified of the most recent videos. Thank you for watching.